Imagine a young man is killed in a car accident. He suffers such serious injuries in the collision that he is declared brain dead at the hospital. His parents are faced with the decision of what to do with his organs since he had not signed up to be an organ donor. Imagine they give their permission for their son's lungs, liver, kidneys, and pancreas to be donated to 4 strangers. This tale, like many others, is both sad and uplifting at the same time. What if the discussion wasn't about organ transplants and instead about a whole body transplant? What if doctors could transplant the head of a healthy person onto the body of a brain-dead person? Would the parents have made the same decision if they knew their son's body was still walking the earth but was controlled by another brain? What would the recipient's reaction be if he or she had a completely different body? Stay with us as we look at the medical and ethical implications of human head transplants. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe button. It's free and will help me to grow this channel. When you obtain your driver's license, you may be given the option to register as an organ donor. What happens next in the narrative of organ donation? Let's look at it from 2 perspectives: that of the organ recipient and that of the organ donor. Patients must be in such bad condition that one of their organs is on the brink of failing in order to receive an organ from a donor. Patients with kidney failure, heart disease, and lung illness may all benefit from a transplant. A patient is put on a waiting list after he or she fulfills the requirements for receiving an organ. The United Network for Organ Sharing maintains this database in the United States. The network is in charge of finding organ recipients and connecting them with donors when they become available. Once on the list, the patient must wait for a call, which may take anywhere from months to years depending on the organ. It doesn't always arrive on schedule and the patient expires before the transplant is completed. Organ donors may register at any time via the network or at the Department of Motor Vehicles while applying for a driver's license. If a person loses all brain function irreversibly and is pronounced brain dead, their organs are still eligible for donation, but the family must agree to the donation. The procedure then proceeds swiftly to match the donor with a recipient and start the surgery. It's probably best to conceive of it as a body transplant, since the transplant recipient keeps his or her own head but gets a new body. Although technically you are transferring the head to a new body, this is simply because the head is smaller and simpler to transport than a complete body. Is it possible that this will happen? Continue watching to discover more about the experiments that have led to this operation becoming a reality. The concept of putting a person together from pieces of other people isn't new. The imaginings of Mary Shelley in her book, Frankenstein, are perhaps the most renowned example in literature. As you may recall, a scientist called Frankenstein creates a monster out of various pieces of cemetery corpses and brings it to life in his laboratory. Outside of fiction, scientists have experimented with animal assemblages quite a bit. Let's have a look at some instances of head transplants. Vladimir Demikov, a Russian doctor, conducted a series of experiments in 1954 that resulted in 2-headed dogs. He was able to graft the head and forelegs of one dog onto the neck of another with great success. Both heads could see, hear, smell, and swallow, which was incredible. One of his experimental animals survived for a total of 29 days. By today's standards, such an experiment seems harsh and pointless. Nevertheless, Demikov was driven by a genuine desire to save human lives. He wanted to apply what he'd learned from the dog trials to human transplants. Only bone, blood arteries, and corneas had been transplanted successfully in people at the time. Larger organ transplants, such as kidneys, had been tried, but the organs had always been rejected. Demikov and his colleagues wanted to build a tissue bank with a stockpile of organs that could be utilized whenever someone needed a transplant. Fast forward to 1970 in the United States, when rhesus monkeys were used in head transplant studies. Dr. Robert White of Cleveland was able to conduct a head transplant on a monkey that was neurologically intact but could not move. The monkey's immune system rejected the head after 9 days, and the animal perished. The inability to attach the spinal cord was the most significant challenge highlighted by the transplant team. Experiments with mice have continued since then in China, and progress has been made in comprehending the spinal cord link. While no human trials have yet been conducted, Sergio Canavero, an Italian surgeon and part of a think tank dedicated to the development of brain research, is certain that he has a technique for transplanting a human head that would work and is preparing to test it. The first stage in a head transplant, like any other organ transplant, is to find someone who is in need. The organ recipient in this instance keeps his or her own head, which is transplanted onto a body. While there may be many individuals with diseases that ruin the body but leave the mind intact, such progressive muscular dystrophies, just one man has come forward so far to attempt this hazardous operation. That man is a 30-year-old Russian citizen, who suffers from a rare hereditary condition that causes his muscles to deteriorate over time. The first item of business is to find an operating room large enough to accommodate 2 simultaneous operations. You can't have someone racing through the streets carrying a head in a bucket of ice to a hospital across town. The reconnection should happen as soon as feasible, within an hour, for the best likelihood of success. Teams of physicians, nurses, and other support personnel would be required to cover all medical specialties, including neurosurgery, vascular surgery, orthopedics for spine fusion, cosmetic surgery, and many more. Both the recipient and the donor would be intubated and ventilated through tracheotomy. Remember, heads will be surgically removed. Ventilation via the mouth won't be particularly useful. Cooling is the next and most important stage. Literally, the bodies would need to be cooled to about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Reduced temperatures like this cause low blood flow, which protects the brain by blunting a number of biological processes that cause neural cell death. Deep incisions would be performed at each neck, exposing arteries, jugular veins, and the spine, with the receiver laying down and subsequently sitting and the donor seated to assist the surgical operations. Both patients' muscles would be color-coded with markers to make subsequent linking easier. The final incision would be made to the spinal cords, with enough slack left for fusing to the new body. Within 1 to 2 minutes, the patient's head would be transferred to the donor body and the spinal cord stumps joined. Here, speed is crucial. While bleeding out isn't a big deal, vessels in the neck would be clamped. The brain needs oxygen and glucose, which it can only receive if it's connected to the rest of the body through the spinal. The psychological effect on the receiver of the new body will likely be the most significant of all. A complete body transplant, unlike many other organ transplants, will always be visible to the recipient, serving as a continuous reminder that their body is not their own. Patients who have had hand transplants are a good comparison group since they have a permanent visual reminder of the procedure. Finding solutions to the ethical issues raised by this surgery may be more challenging than finding out how to carry it out effectively. Where would we stop if this procedure worked? Could individuals pay money to have their heads swapped without any medical reason? Is it okay to make whatever kind of person you desire by combining pieces from a variety of people? What if you had a new body? Would you still be the same person? In any case, where does the person reside, in the body or in the mind? Is it possible that the procedure might be utilized to assist individuals in changing their gender? The newly bodied person would have the recipient's mind, but if they were to procreate, their children would receive the donor's genetic heritage. Is it all right? If and when we do figure out how human head transplants could work, we'll have to do some deep thinking as a society to find out if we even want to go to these extremes, and what implications such medical breakthroughs would have on our world. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like and subscribe button. See you in the next video.